This hour, turning now, though, to the 2016 race, a race that has plenty of Republican candidates lining up to run. A very different story, though, on the Democratic side, where we all know that Hillary Clinton is looking at the race, and she casts an imposing shadow. Her poll numbers among Democrats, they are through the roof right now. The question, though, is which Democrats are going to look at all those advantages that Hillary has and decide that they're going to run anyway. The question really, if any Democrats are going to do that. If you look around right now, there's former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley. He's trying to balance his desire to run with a reluctance to engage directly with Clinton. There's a lot of talk that O'Malley is really angling to be her vice presidential candidate next year. There's also Joe Biden, the current vice president. Clearly, he'd like to be president. He's also been visiting the early primary states, but he hasn't set up a PAC yet. He hasn't hired a staff. He hasn't started raising money. And most believe that the only way he's actually going to run in this race is if Hillary Clinton decides not to run in this race. There's also Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. He's been traversing the country, acting like a candidate in many ways. Although Sanders, it should be noted, he remains, at least for now, an independent. He's not actually a member of the Democratic Party. He would have to do that if he is going to run. Also, Jim Webb, the former one-term senator from Virginia, he has said he's interested in the race. He has also said and done little else besides that. In other words, Hillary Clinton could be looking at something close to an uncontested path to the Democratic presidential nomination. But there are some out there. There are some who believe there is still one Democrat who is capable of going toe-to-toe with Hillary Clinton, capable of rousing a massive grassroots army, raising big bucks through small donations, commanding the media spotlight, shining in debates. That Democrat they have on their mind is Elizabeth Warren, the Massachusetts senator and anti-Wall Street crusader. Now, Warren, to be clear, insists that she is not running. She's also taken no steps to run. And even if she did run, polls show that she, too, would run far behind Clinton on the Democratic side. And yet, the movement for an Elizabeth Warren candidacy has not entirely gone away. Ready for Warren, that is a grassroots group that already has a presence in Iowa and New Hampshire. It is still trying to coax her into the race, still hoping to field a serious competitor to Hillary Clinton. The group saying this week, quote, that a contested nomination will strengthen the Democratic Party by holding the candidates accountable for addressing critical issues of growing income inequality, a worsening climate crisis, and so many others. So is there any chance that Ready for Warren will actually get their wish? Joining us now, the campaign manager for Ready for Warren, Erica Sagrin. She joins us now from Columbus, Ohio. Back with us at the table, we have David Avella from GoPac, political strategist Basil Smikle, John Stanton from BuzzFeed. So, Erica, let me start with you. She says she's not running. She's not raising money. She's not doing anything that a candidate would do formally. What are the chances in your mind that Elizabeth Warren is actually going to run for president?
Hi, Steve. Well, we believe we can convince Warren to run. We know she has always been a very reluctant politician. She did not intend to run for Senate, but was convinced to do so by a strong draft movement there. So we believe we can convince her to run if she sees an opportunity for her to make a real difference for working families and the fight that she has led her entire life. I think it's very possible, and it's still very early in the process.
So what is Elizabeth Warren versus Hillary Clinton? If we start by looking at all those poll numbers for Hillary Clinton, you say that is somebody we've never seen a favorite like this, according to the polls on the Democratic side. So what does Elizabeth Warren bring to the table in your mind that makes it, okay, never mind, we shouldn't have Hillary Clinton, we should have Elizabeth Warren? What is the big difference? What is the difference between Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton?
Warren is only really an underdog because people don't know as much about her. But she has an incredible story, an incredible message that we've seen really resonate deeply with voters across the country and in places like Iowa and New Hampshire. She has been a fighter and a champion for working folks, for the middle class. She established the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but those are the sorts of things that Hillary Clinton would say to describe herself, that Hillary Clinton supporters would talk that way about her. She's a fighter for the working class. She's a champion of the underdog, those sorts of things. So what is the difference between Elizabeth Warren? What does Elizabeth Warren bring to the table in real terms that Hillary Clinton doesn't?
Sure. Well, I think part of it is just what we've seen in terms of the momentum and the interest and the excitement. Warren really meets this moment we're at. People have been thinking about skyrocketing income inequality, the way the system is really rigged in favor of those at the very top and not working for most regular folks. And I think Warren has really brought that discussion to the forefront that's resonated with a lot of people. And I also think having her in the primary would provide that opportunity for her to lay out her vision, for Hillary Clinton and any other candidates to really lay out clear, different visions that they have for the country, and for voters to look at those and decide.
Is Hillary Clinton too close to Wall Street?
I think some people would say so. Some people would say...
Do you say so? Do you think Hillary Clinton's too close to Wall Street?
I mean, I think Elizabeth Warren is taking on Wall Street in a way that we want to see more Democrats do. She has been unafraid to call out the big banks, the powerful interests, the crash.
Right. So that's Elizabeth Warren's calling card. I'm saying, is that something Hillary Clinton's been reluctant to do in your mind, to call out the big banks?
I'm saying I want to see Clinton do that more, and I want to see all candidates do that more and follow Warren's lead.
All right, let's bring the panel into this a little bit here. So the idea of an Elizabeth Warren candidacy, I don't see it happening, but I also find myself wondering what Erica's talking about right now, how widespread is that in the Democratic Party? Because I look at those poll numbers and I say, again, 86% of Democrats right now say, yeah, we could see ourselves supporting Hillary Clinton. I mean, you don't see those numbers for people. She leads all in the horse race there by 42 points.
Yeah, I don't think there's a huge, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like there's a big swell of people that really want someone else to run against her. I think she needs somebody to run against her, frankly. She does much better when she's involved in a primary where she can fight and she can sort of create contrasts. Having herself be out there by herself or against, Bernie Sanders or something like that, that's not a really, like a serious candidate in terms of, posing a serious challenge to her. That's a problem for her. She needs somebody maybe like Warren or some other Democrat to step to the plate and sort of come in and at least play a foil for her.
Yeah, well, Dave, as a Republican looking at this, the idea of Hillary Clinton having a practically uncontested path to the nomination, do you look at that and say, well, that's a problem for us? She's going to be able to raise all that money. She's going to be able to focus on Republicans for the next year. Does that hurt your chances against her in the fall?
Steve, you may remember that I sat in John's seat in November or December and said Elizabeth Warren would be the Democratic Party's nominee. One. Two.
Are you sticking with that?
I'm sticking with that. I still stick with that.
Is that wishful thinking?
No, look, she brings a passion, and her supporters bring a level of passion that right now we don't see in the Clinton operation. And let me also say, as a Republican, I can speak on good authority that nominating whose turn it is not always the best strategy. To look back and say, let's go get somebody who's run before, or let's go get somebody who's been the good soldier and let them do it, that's not always the best strategy to becoming president of the United States.
And going back to a point you made earlier, I think we want to sometimes couch Hillary Clinton as this candidate that nobody really wants. She's unlikable in certain respects. But if you go back to 2008, and she barely lost to Barack Obama, there's a huge groundswell of support for her then, and I think there is now. I actually don't think that even when you talk about primaries, she's not the one that say, I don't want a primary. I don't think she would even actually shy away from that. I think I don't think she would shy away from that. And I think most Democrats, whether they will say that they fully support Hillary Clinton, would not say so-and-so should not be in the race or should not get into the race. But the reality is I think there's a tremendous groundswell of support for Hillary. And I think she is going to create that movement as she keeps talking about these issues, and sort of the speech at the UN that she gave the other day. As she starts to really dig deeper into these issues, I think you'll see that support kind of solidify.
Well, so Erica, let me ask you this final question here. You're still trying to get Elizabeth Warren into the race. At what point? When will it be, when you're satisfied with her no, that this is the final no, and okay, we're going to look for a plan B right here? When will that be? What point is that?
It's still so early. We're still about a year and a half out from the convention, and so
the first primary is 10 months away, so it's
right.
Not a year and a half.
I mean, we're focused on drafting Warren, and no serious Democratic candidate has announced that they're running. So it's still very early. We're going to keep focused on drafting her. We're still seeing just incredible, strong momentum building. We saw Robert Reich say that Warren should run. Van Jones, hundreds of thousands of people are calling on her to run. So we're still building momentum, and we're going to keep doing that till we can convince her to get in the race.
All right, Erica Sagrin's ready for Warren. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. having me.
Still ahead, how did it go this weekend in New Hampshire? We're going to talk with a former governor from the state, John Sununu, who met with Scott Walker and Jeb Bush this weekend. And next, the partisan divide over what to do about ISIS boils down to just one key soundbite this week.